I'm in the tube now with our fabulously talented visual effects artist, Laurent. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for the invitation.
You're welcome. We really enjoyed your presentation earlier. I'd like to talk a little bit more about how you work with some of the Adobe tools, if that's all right, and what you
Yes,
do.
of course.
I've got the image up that you showed earlier of the Born Ultimatum. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us through this image again and how you worked with Photoshop for this particular shot?
Yes. So this is the image of the final shot, what was done, on what we saw on film, actually. And what we see, the whole facade has been reworked on Photoshop, because if we see the original footage, so we see that first there was no window. We had to add the windows, but also the next sequence, which is inside the room, was shot in studio a couple of months after that shot. And later on, they discovered that from inside, all the windows had some arcs on the top. So we had to change the whole facade. So we did add the arcs. Then, the windows and
the shutters as
well.
Yeah.
And all this texturing, the facade, everything was done with Photoshop.
Fantastic. And do you work with Photoshop on a regular basis then to do kind of texturing and that sort of thing within the movie?
On VFX, yes, Photoshop is absolutely used every day. First from the concept, because the concept is always shown first on stills.
Yeah.
To see, even for us to see, what we could do for the effects. So as a research tool, it's very important.
Yeah.
And we use a lot of matte painting, which is used in the background.
And in actual fact, you did some of the matte painting work on Bridget Jones, didn't you? The Edge of Reason. Can you talk us through that one?
So this is the final shot of the movie, and the director decided to change the ending 3 months before the ending, and that was in July.
Yeah.
So they had to shoot in the middle of August in the countryside.
Yeah. And it was supposed to be snow covered, obviously.
But yes, because it happens in winter.
Yeah.
So this is the original footage, and we see that we had some fake snow covering a little bit some of the parts.
Yeah.
But what you see behind all the trees, so we had to remove the trees and to replace it with backgrounds. And here we see on the background, we had some simple 3D geometry on landscape because of the parallax, because the camera is moving a lot on that shot.
Right.
And
so it wasn't just a case of putting in a still background there with some trees and snow. It needed to move correctly.
The camera starts on the ground and then goes up a lot.
Yeah.
And because of the parallax, we couldn't have just planes next to each other. So we had to create some geometry.
Yeah.
But everything was done in Photoshop, and then we projected into that geometry.
Yeah.
So it works with the parallax and the background on the clouds.
Fantastic.
Everything was added on this.
So you've got so much depth in that shot that just wasn't there at all before.
Yes.
Amazing.
And also because I was not for long in Britain, so that's why it looked more like Switzerland than Britain. But,
it's very romantic looking. I love it.
That was an interesting shot to do.
So you've been working in the UK a lot, haven't you?
For
the last
about
10 years.
10 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe you were working on some of the Harry Potter movies. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And so the industry in the UK, when did that start to become such a big player in the
it started really with Harry Potter.
It was with Harry Potter.
Yes, because you had a very good post-production companies on the venues here in London.
Yeah.
But none of these venues were working for Hollywood at the time. And when J.K. Rowling made the contract with the Warner, she had a clause that everything had to be done in the UK.
Good for her.
That's very good. But the studio didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And when all the photography was finished for the first one, and the reflex was to go to facilities in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And she said, you have to read the contract. So that's why all the facilities which were existing here, had to take the work.
Yeah.
A lot of.
So they must have been fairly small in those days, were they?
I started with Double Negative at the time. Double Negative existed for 2-3 years at the time, but it was 30 people there.
Yeah.
And so, we had to take the work. A lot of artists came from the States.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of artists here in the UK, in Europe, and it started to grow thanks to Harry Potter. And when the studio saw the quality of what we did here in Europe, then they started to ask for other movies as well.
Yeah. So along with all of the video effects work that you do, you also have other creative projects, don't you, that you work with the Creative Cloud, a lot of the applications within there and the cloud interface as well. Tell us a little bit about how the cloud helps you with what you do.
So, yes, VFX is only one part of what I do, but I'm using it for Rubedo, which is the practice that I founded with Vesna Petreshin. And we try to cross disciplines. So we are using every kind of medium, and from music, we compose a lot of music. We are both musicians. So Audition is used all the time.
Yeah, fantastic.
But we do a lot of movies, live performances. During performances, we use a lot of visuals because we always try to create immersive space. So After Effects, Premiere, and we use the cloud because everything is connected together. You know, so it's so easy to go from one app to another one.
You're really doing the full workflow, aren't you, with the type of projects you work with?
You know, when we work, we have always 4 applications open all the time, all the time, all from the cloud.
And how do you draw all of these things together in the kind of planning stages? What do you work
actually,
with to do
that was very interesting because I discovered story from the cloud. First to script one film, and then it's so easy because you have all the parts where you can plan a production. And we started to use it as well to produce live performances or installations. And it's one of the main.
It's a really good collaboration tool,
Absolutely,
isn't it?
yes.
Good for organising kind of all of the different elements together. Fantastic. Oh, it's a personal favourite of mine. I started working on it in the early days when I was directing and producing. So,
well done.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. So yeah, great to hear about that. Thank you. Can I just find out a little bit more now about how you actually made your way into the industry? Because there weren't traditional training courses around for video effects, were there?
No, in a way, I'm a little bit lucky because I'm a bit, you know, I'm from a generation where it was the early days of computing and especially graphics, any kind of graphics. So we all had to learn by ourselves. So there was absolutely no school, and especially in art, it was absolutely not considered as anything. You know, digital was
just not there.
Not there. Yeah, I started to use personal computers, Commodore 64, when I was 12 or 13. And from the start, I saw that as a very creative tool because I could make some sound, I could make some visuals. It was very simple, but it was fun, actually. I just never stopped.
Yeah, brilliant. And you worked quite a lot in computer games, did you? In your early days as well, I believe?
Yes, first, I used all the basics to do titles for videos. And sorry, I happened to go to Ljubljana, to Slovenia, to do a storyboard for a small company. But this company was using Silicon Graphics and doing some 3D animations on effects, mostly for architecture visualization, but advertising. And during this 3 months where I was supposed to do this storyboard, I saw the machines and I started to work on that. And so I stayed 8 years.
So you kind of, that's your starting point for moving into 3D.
And we were all working night and day trying to find new ways of creating images.
I mean, I think this is the great thing about the Creative Cloud now, that if you have this full membership to the Creative Cloud, you have access to so many different tools that you might not have picked up and started using before.
Absolutely.
And the fact you can pick them up and start working with them is, it's a really valuable thing, right?
Absolutely, because, that's how I really discovered Audition and the possibilities of Audition, for example. Because I used to use a lot of other softwares especially for the mastering. And then, because it was there, and for a film it was quicker to use Audition with Premiere. I started to see some of,
some real possibilities.
The possibilities that some other softwares cannot really use. So I'm using Audition also just for soundtracks sometimes. And,
fantastic. So what would be great now for our younger members of the audience and for those kind of starting out in their careers, if you have any advice to people wanting to move into the video effects industry?
Well, the first is to work and trying to to learn and to do things all the time, as much as possible. And to keep up with the technology because it's changing all the time. So it's very important when there is a new version, like, last month now, we have the new version of the cloud.
Yeah.
It's very important to see all the new things because when we are used to one software, it's very easy we know how to use it. And if we don't know what exists, we won't use it.
Yeah.
So it's very important to keep up always, with the technology.
But to remain on the cutting edge of things, right?
Absolutely, because this is what will give the edge.
Yeah.
But what is very important also is behind knowing how to use a software is to know what it means. So it's important to learn, in my opinion, the basics of drawings, for example, for art history as well. It's very important, and to have all this literature and for any creative work.
And I would imagine also you need to understand the physics behind the 3D stuff that you're doing, not just kind of be able to make the software do it.
Yes, in
you
3D, absolutely, because, when I started, we had to script to make a sphere, it had to be scripted. So, we need to know a little bit of the basics, and especially in terms of space and volume.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what do you think's been the secret to your success in the industry?
Coffee, probably.
Coffee.
Most important.
For most people in the creative industry, I would say.
Well, one way is being curious, knowing that I never know anything, so I will learn, every day new things and trying to find different ways of doing things. Because very often, a director will say, okay, we have this reference, in this movie, I'd like something a little bit like that.
Yeah.
But if you do what has been done already, there is nothing really special. So the idea is really to try to get something a bit new and to give our...
It's very
input.
important to use your imagination and have your own inputs.
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Really, really useful information and insights there from you, Laurent. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much.
Get better.